Laura froze, her coffee cup trembling as a viral video played. A young man's laugh, achingly familiar, pierced her heart. Could it be Ethan, her son, missing for 18 years? The screen flickered, her pulse raced, whispering hope into a mystery she'd buried long ago. Each night, Laura sketched Ethan's face, her pencil tracing the curves of a 5-year-old smile. Her hands, calloused from years of clinging to hope, shook with every line. In Asheville's quiet, her art held a mother's unwavering belief that her son was still out there, waiting. Before diving into the thrilling story, please comment your location and hit the like button to support the video. Your engagement means the world to us. Laura Bennett lived in a small, sunlit apartment on Asheville's College Street, where the hum of the city barely reached her. At 52, her life was a quiet routine of freelance graphic design, her desk a mosaic of sketch pads, colored pencils, and half-finished logos for local cafes. The walls, though, told a deeper story. They were covered with crayon drawings, stick figures of a boy and his mother, a dog, a treehouse, each one preserved like a shrine. These were Ethan's, drawn when he was 5, before he vanished. She couldn't bear to take them down, as if removing them would erase him entirely. Every morning, Laura brewed coffee, sat by her window, and watched the world move on without her. She'd stopped attending book clubs or neighborhood potlucks years ago, her social circle shrinking to a few clients and her cat, Jasper. Her days were spent tweaking fonts and layouts, but her nights belonged to Ethan. She'd pull out her sketchbook, tracing his face from memory, his wide hazel eyes, the dimple on his left cheek. The act was both comfort and torment, keeping him alive in her mind while reminding her of the void. Laura volunteered at a community art program on weekends, teaching kids to draw. She smiled as they scribbled, but her heart ached when a child's laugh echoed Ethan's. She'd pause, steady her breath, and carry on, her resilience a quiet strength. Her phone rarely rang, except for occasional calls from her sister in Raleigh, who gently urged her to move on. Laura would nod through the conversation, but moving on felt like betrayal. She kept a box under her bed, Ethan's old clothes, a stuffed bear, a photo of them at Biltmore Estate, items she'd touch when the grief grew too heavy. Her life wasn't joyless, but it was incomplete. She found solace in Asheville's autumn leaves, their fleeting beauty mirroring her hope, fragile but persistent. Clients praised her work, unaware that every design carried a piece of her pain. Laura's existence was a delicate balance, holding on to a past she couldn't reclaim while navigating a present that demanded she keep going. Asheville, North Carolina, buzzed with life in 2025, its streets alive with artisans, musicians, and tourists. The city's eclectic charm, brick storefronts, neon-lit breweries, and murals splashed across walls drew crowds to its festivals and Farmers Ziff markets. On Haywood Street, buskers strummed guitars, and cafes spilled chatter onto sidewalks. Yet for Laura, Asheville was a paradox. Vibrant yet isolating, a place where she felt both rooted and adrift. 18 years ago, Asheville was smaller, less polished, but still a hub of community. Laura and Ethan had lived in a modest bungalow in West Asheville, where neighbors knew each other's names. She'd been a young mother then, juggling part-time design gigs while pushing Ethan on swings at Carrier Park. Flashbacks haunted her. Ethan's giggles as they tossed pebbles into the French Broad River, his tiny hand in hers at the Saturday market, where he'd beg for honey sticks. Those were the days when hope was effortless, before the market became the site of her worst nightmare. Now, Asheville had grown, its skyline dotted with new condos, its culture amplified by social media. Laura avoided the market, its stalls a reminder of the day Ethan disappeared. She preferred quieter corners, Grove Arcade's bookshops, the trails of Blue Ridge Parkway, where she could think. The city's energy clashed with her solitude, its festivals a blur she watched from her window. She'd see families at Pritchard Park, fathers hoisting kids onto shoulders, and feel a pang so sharp she'd turn away. Laura's grief was a private ritual, but Asheville's pulse kept her tethered to the world. She'd walk past galleries on Biltmore Avenue, their colors sparking ideas for her designs. The city's seasons marked time: spring's dogwoods, summer's fireflies, fall's golden haze. Yet, time felt frozen for Laura, each day a repeat of the last, until that viral video shattered her routine. Asheville, with its beauty and bustle, was both her refuge and her prison, a place where Ethan's absence lingered in every corner, whispering that he might still be out there. Laura sat at her cluttered desk, the glow of her laptop casting shadows across Ethan's childhood drawings on the wall. It was a quiet Thursday evening in Asheville, the kind where the city's hum faded into her apartment stillness. She scrolled through a local news site, her usual routine to fill the silence, when a headline caught her eye. Young man saves child from traffic in Pritchard Park. The accompanying video auto-played, and Laura's breath caught. A young man, no older than 23, knelt beside a frightened girl, his voice calm as he reassured her. His hazel eyes, framed by dark curls, locked onto the camera for a fleeting moment. Laura froze. Those eyes, they were Ethan's. She replayed the video, her heart thudding. The man, introduced as Caleb, had a familiar tilt to his head, a gesture Ethan used when he was nervous, brushing his hair back with 2 fingers. She leaned closer, studying every detail. The slope of his shoulders, the way he smiled softly at the child. It couldn't be coincidence. 18 years had passed, but those eyes, that gesture, they were echoes of her son. Laura's hands trembled as she paused the video, the frame frozen on Caleb's face. She pulled out her sketchbook, flipping to a drawing of Ethan at 5, his eyes wide with wonder. The resemblance was uncanny. Laura watched the clip again, then again, each loop fueling a spark of hope she hadn't felt in years. The news segment mentioned Caleb worked at Malaprop's bookstore, a local staple. She scribbled the name on a sticky note, her mind racing. Was this real, or was grief playing tricks? She opened her phone, searching for the video on social media where it had gone viral, hundreds of comments praising Caleb's quick thinking. One user wrote, "He's always so quiet, but he's got a good heart." Quiet. Ethan had been shy, clinging to her leg at crowded markets. Laura's chest tightened. She needed to know more. She called Grace Harper, her friend and a journalist for the Asheville Citizen-Times. Grace had covered missing persons cases and knew Laura's story. "I saw this video," Laura said, her voice shaking. "There's a guy, I think it's Ethan." Grace listened, her tone gentle but skeptical. "Send me the link, I'll dig into it." Laura emailed the video, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She didn't sleep that night, replaying Caleb's gesture, his eyes, the hope that refused to let go. The next morning, Laura stood outside Malaprop's bookstore, her scarf pulled tight against the October chill. The shop's windows glowed warmly, stacked with novels and local zines. She clutched a photo of Ethan, his last school picture, taken weeks before he vanished. Her pulse raced as she stepped inside, the bell jingling. The store smelled of coffee and paper, a comforting mix, but Laura's nerves were electric. She scanned the aisles, searching for Caleb. Grace had called earlier with details. Caleb Turner, 23, had worked at Malaprop's for 2 years. No family history, just a vague backstory about moving from Charlotte. Laura wandered past shelves, pretending to browse, until she spotted him. Caleb was restocking a display, his movements deliberate, his expression distant. She watched him, heart pounding, noting the way he tucked his hair behind his ear, Ethan's habit. She wanted to call his name, to see if he'd turn, but fear stopped her. What if she was wrong? Laura approached the counter, where a young barista, Sophie Reed, rang up a customer. Sophie's warm smile put Laura at ease. "Looking for something specific?" Sophie asked. Laura hesitated, then showed Ethan's photo. "I'm looking for someone who looks like this, but older. Maybe Caleb?" Sophie's eyes softened. "Caleb's quiet, keeps to himself. He's over there." She pointed subtly. Laura thanked her, her throat tight. She lingered near Caleb, picking up a book to blend in. He was helping a customer, his voice low but kind. Laura noticed a small scar on his hand, not something she remembered from Ethan, but time could change things. She caught his eye briefly, and he offered a polite nod before turning away. Laura's hope wavered, but she couldn't leave. She bought a coffee, sat at a corner table and watched him, her mind torn between doubt and certainty. Grace texted, "Found an address for Caleb. Meet me tonight?" Laura nodded to herself, gripping Ethan's photo. She wasn't ready to confront him yet, but she was closer than she'd been in 18 years. Before watching, kindly comment your location and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us create more captivating stories for you. In the spring of 2007, Asheville's River Arts District Farmers Market buzzed with life. Laura, then 34, held 5-year-old Ethan's hand as they weaved through stalls brimming with fresh peaches and handmade crafts. Ethan, with his hazel eyes sparkling, tugged her toward a honey vendor, begging for a stick. Laura laughed, her guard down in the familiar crowd. She didn't notice Nathan Cole, a school counselor who'd volunteered at Ethan's preschool, watching them. Nathan, with his easy smile and soft-spoken charm, was a trusted figure. He'd often brought Ethan crayons, earning the boy's trust. That day, he approached with a promise. "I've got a puppy in my van, Ethan. Want to see?" Laura turned to pay for a jar of jam, her hand slipping from Ethan's for just a moment. When she looked back, he was gone. The market's noise drowned her calls as panic set in. She pushed through vendors, shouting Ethan's name, her voice cracking. Shoppers stared, some joined the search, but the crowd was thick, the chaos overwhelming. Laura's heart pounded as she ran to Nathan's usual spot near the school booth, but he was gone too. By dusk, the police were involved, cordoning off the market. Laura collapsed on a bench, clutching Ethan's stuffed bear, which he dropped. The police found no trace of Ethan. Nathan, questioned briefly, claimed he'd left early for a family emergency. His alibi held. Co-workers vouched he'd been at a school event later that day. Laura plastered Asheville with posters, Ethan's smiling face, his dimpled cheek, his favorite red sneakers. She went on local news, her voice trembling as she begged for leads. Tips flooded in. A boy at a gas station, a child in a park, but none were Ethan. Months turned to years, and the case grew cold. Laura's life unraveled. She quit her design job at a firm, unable to focus, and moved to freelance work to keep searching. Each dead end chipped away at her hope, but she never stopped sketching Ethan's face, aging him in her mind. Nathan, meanwhile, had vanished from Asheville shortly after, moving to Charlotte with Caleb, a boy he claimed was his nephew. No one questioned his story. He was too respected, too unassuming. Laura never suspected the man who'd once helped Ethan tie his shoes. The market, once a place of joy, became a haunted memory she avoided, its colors now gray in her mind. Laura's search for Ethan consumed her early years. She spent savings on private investigators who chased rumors of sightings across North Carolina. She joined support groups for missing children, clinging to stories of reunions, but each meeting left her hollow. The police followed leads. A backpack found in Raleigh, a blurry CCTV image, but nothing panned out. Laura's sister urged her to heal, but Laura couldn't. She kept a journal, writing letters to Ethan, promising she'd find him. Her sketches grew more detailed, imagining him at 10, 15, 20, her pencil a lifeline to hope. Grace Harper entered Laura's life in 2015 when she wrote a feature on cold cases for the Asheville Citizen-Times. Interviewing Laura, Grace was struck by her quiet strength. They became friends, Grace checking in monthly, sharing any new leads. Unlike the police, who'd moved on, Grace dug deeper, requesting old market footage and interviewing vendors. Her persistence rekindled Laura's resolve, though years of false hopes made her cautious. Grace's latest find, the viral video of Caleb, felt different, like a crack in a long-sealed door. At Malaprops, Laura met Sophie Reed, the barista who'd pointed out Caleb. Sophie, 22, had noticed Caleb's odd habits. He avoided personal questions, flinched at sudden noises, and seemed guarded despite his kindness. When Laura shared Ethan's story, Sophie's eyes widened. "He's always sketching in a notebook," she said. "Never shows anyone, but it's like he's hiding something." Sophie offered to watch Caleb, passing subtle observations to Laura. Her empathy, born of losing a brother to illness, made her a quiet ally. Laura and Grace met that night at a quiet cafe on Patton Avenue. Grace spread out notes. Caleb's lack of records before age 10, Nathan's sudden move to Charlotte post-2007. "It's thin," Grace admitted, "but it's a start." Laura gripped Ethan's photo, her hope fragile but growing. Sophie's tip about Caleb's sketches lingered. Could they hold a clue to his past? Laura felt the weight of 18 years lifting, replaced by a nervous anticipation. She was ready to chase this lead, no matter where it took her. Laura returned to Malaprop's bookstore the next day, her heart a tangle of hope and dread. The bell jingled as she entered, the scent of coffee grounding her nerves. Caleb was at the counter, sorting receipts, his dark curls falling over his eyes. Laura clutched a sketchbook, her excuse to linger, and chose a table near him. She opened to a blank page, pretending to draw, but her eyes tracked his every move. His quiet efficiency, the way he paused to help a customer, felt so familiar, like echoes of Ethan's gentle nature. She noticed a small leather notebook tucked in his apron, its edges worn, as if it held secrets he guarded closely. Laura approached the counter, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. "Hi, Caleb. I'm Laura, a regular here. I love your book recommendations." He glanced up, offering a shy smile. "Thanks. Anything specific you're looking for?" His voice was soft, with a slight hesitance that tugged at her. She mentioned a novel about family, watching his reaction. "Sounds nice," he said, but his eyes flickered, as if the word family stirred something buried. Laura took a chance. "I used to read to my son. He loved stories about adventures." Caleb's hand paused, his expression unreadable, but he nodded. "That's sweet." Over the next week, Laura visited daily, each time bringing a small offering, a pencil sketch of Asheville's skyline, a question about a book. Caleb warmed slightly, sharing bits about his love for poetry. One day, she showed him a drawing of a boy flying a kite, inspired by a memory of Ethan. "Reminds me of something I drew once," Caleb said, his voice distant. Laura's heart leapt, but she didn't push. Instead, she asked about his sketches. He hesitated, then pulled out his notebook, flipping past pages to show a rough sketch of a riverbank. "Looks like the French Broad," Laura said softly, her throat tight. It was where she and Ethan had played. Their conversations grew longer, though Caleb remained guarded. Laura shared stories of her childhood, weaving in memories of Ethan without revealing her suspicion. She noticed his scar again on his left hand and wondered if it was new or something she'd forgotten. Each interaction built a fragile bridge, but doubt gnawed at her. Was she seeing what she wanted to see? Sophie, the barista, caught Laura's eye one day, whispering, "He's been quieter since you started coming, like he's thinking hard." Laura nodded, her resolve strengthening. She wasn't just chasing a ghost, she was reaching for her son. Caleb, who Laura believed was Ethan, felt a strange pull toward her. At his small apartment in West Asheville, he paced, his notebook open to a sketch of a woman's face, drawn from a dream he couldn't shake. Laura's stories stirred unease like memories knocking at a locked door. Nathan, the man who raised him, had always said his parents died in a car accident. But Laura's warmth, her familiar gestures, made him question everything. He avoided her gaze at the bookstore, fearing what her kindness might unravel. Grace, meanwhile, dug deeper into Nathan's past. At a coffee shop, she showed Laura a file. Nathan Cole, once a counselor at Ethan's preschool, had left Asheville abruptly in 2007, claiming a job transfer. His records in Charlotte were spotty, no family, no clear history before his counseling days. Grace found a photo of Nathan at a school event, smiling beside a young boy who looked eerily like Ethan. "This could be him," Grace said, her voice low. Laura's hands shook as she studied the image, her hope warring with fear. Caleb noticed Laura's frequent visits, her sketches mirroring his own. One evening, he found her lingering after closing, helping stack chairs. "You remind me of someone," he admitted, his voice barely audible. Laura's heart raced, but she kept her tone light. "Someone nice, I hope?" He nodded, then turned away, his jaw tight. At home, he confronted Nathan, asking about his childhood. Nathan's face hardened. "Don't dig up the past, Caleb. You've got a good life here." The warning chilled him, planting seeds of doubt. Sophie, sensing Caleb's turmoil, slipped Laura a note. "He's been sketching that riverbank a lot, says it feels like home." Laura shared this with Grace, who cross-checked old police reports. A witness from the 2007 market had mentioned a man with a van near the river. The pieces were aligning, but Laura needed proof. She invited Caleb for coffee, hoping to nudge him closer to the truth. He agreed, but his eyes held a mix of curiosity and fear, as if he sensed the life he knew might soon collapse. Laura deserves a like for her courage, but sadly, she hasn't received it yet. Click the like button to show your support for her journey. Laura's hands trembled as she stood outside the Asheville Community Center, a modern building with glass windows reflecting the autumn sunset. Grace was by her side, clutching a folder of evidence, photos, old police reports, and Nathan's spotty employment records. Inside, Nathan Cole, now a respected community leader, was hosting a charity event, his smile charming the crowd. Laura's heart pounded. This was the man who'd stolen her son, who'd built a life on lies. Grace squeezed her arm. "We do this together," she whispered. Laura nodded, steeling herself for the confrontation that could unravel 18 years of pain. They entered the bustling hall, where Nathan stood at a podium thanking donors. Laura's eyes scanned the room, landing on Caleb, who was arranging chairs in a corner. His gaze met hers, a flicker of unease crossing his face. Grace had warned him Laura might stop by, but he didn't know why. Laura approached Nathan, her voice steady despite the storm inside. "Mr. Cole, we need to talk. Now." Nathan's smile faltered, his eyes narrowing. "I'm in the middle of an event. Can it wait?" Laura shook her head, holding up Ethan's old-school photo. "This is about a boy you knew in 2007. The room quieted, heads turning. Nathan's charm slipped, his voice sharp. "I don't know what you're talking about." Grace stepped forward, opening her folder. "We have evidence. You were at the Farmers' Market when Ethan Bennett disappeared. You left Asheville right after, with a boy you called your nephew." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Caleb froze, his hands gripping a chair. Laura's voice broke as she turned to him. "Caleb, I think you're my son, Ethan. He took you from me." Nathan laughed, a hollow sound. "This is absurd. She's delusional." But Caleb's face paled, his eyes darting between Laura and Nathan. Grace handed him the photo of young Ethan, her voice gentle. "Look at this. Do you recognize anything?" Caleb's fingers traced the boy's face, his breath uneven. I don't know." Nathan moved toward him, his tone commanding. "Caleb, don't listen to them. They're trying to ruin us." Laura stepped closer, her voice soft but firm. "Ethan, you loved drawing by the river? You had a stuffed bear named Max. Do you remember?" Caleb's eyes widened, a memory flickering. Max, a name he hadn't thought of in years. The tension snapped as Nathan lunged for the folder, scattering papers. Guests gasped, and a volunteer grabbed his arm. Laura's heart raced. She saw fear in Nathan's eyes, the mask of a liar cracking. Caleb stepped between them, his voice shaking. "Is it true? Did you take me?" Nathan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, his silence damning. Laura reached for Caleb, tears falling. "I've looked for you every day." The room felt electric, the truth hanging heavy as Caleb grappled with the unraveling of his life. Caleb stumbled outside, the cool Asheville air hitting his face like a slap. The community center's lights buzzed behind him, but his mind was a storm. Laura's words, Ethan, Max, the river, stirred fragments of a life he didn't understand. Nathan had raised him, given him a home, but his warnings, his secrecy, now felt like chains. Laura and Grace followed, keeping their distance. Caleb clutched Ethan's photo, its edges creasing under his grip. "I don't know who I am," he whispered, his voice raw. Laura's eyes softened. "Let me help you find out." At a nearby park, they sat on a bench, the French Broad River glinting under streetlights. Grace laid out the evidence. Nathan's sudden move, the lack of Caleb's early records, the market witness. Caleb's hands shook as he opened his notebook, showing a sketch of a boy with a bear. "I've drawn this since I was a kid," he said. "I thought it was just a dream." Laura's breath caught. It was Max, Ethan's bear. She touched his arm, her voice trembling. "That's you, Ethan. You're my son." Caleb pulled back, fear and longing clashing. "Nathan said my parents were dead. Why would he lie?" Grace suggested a DNA test, her tone calm but urgent. "It's the only way to know for sure." Caleb's eyes searched Laura's, seeing her pain, her hope. He wanted to believe her, but Nathan's voice echoed, "Don't dig up the past." Yet, the photo, the sketches, Laura's unwavering gaze chipped away at his doubt. "Okay," he said finally, his voice barely audible. "I'll do the test." Laura's tears fell, but she didn't reach for him, giving him space. Nathan, detained by volunteers, was escorted to the police station after trying to flee. Caleb watched him go, his heart torn. "He was all I had," he said, his voice breaking. Laura nodded, her own pain mirroring his. "I know it's hard, but you're not alone anymore." Grace called a contact at the station, arranging for the DNA test. Caleb's decision felt like a leap into the unknown, but Laura's presence, steady and warm, anchored him. As they left the park, the river's quiet flow seemed to whisper that the truth, though painful, was finally within reach. Thank you for watching this heartfelt story. Please subscribe to our channel to join our community and support our efforts to bring more meaningful tales to you. Your subscription inspires us to keep creating content that touches your heart. Laura sat in a sterile waiting room at Asheville's Mission Hospital, her hands clasped tightly around a worn photo of Ethan at 5, his dimpled smile frozen in time. Grace sat beside her, offering quiet reassurance, while Sophie, who'd insisted on coming, scrolled nervously on her phone. The past week had been a blur since the confrontation at the community center. Caleb, Ethan, had agreed to a DNA test, and now the results were due. Laura's heart thudded, hope and fear colliding. What if she was wrong? What if he wasn't her son? But his eyes, his sketches, the way he said Max, they felt like proof. The doctor entered, a clipboard in hand, her expression neutral. "Miss Bennett, the results are conclusive. Caleb is your biological son, Ethan." Laura's breath caught, tears spilling as she covered her mouth. Grace squeezed her shoulder, her own eyes misty. Sophie let out a soft gasp, smiling. Laura's mind flashed to that day at the farmer's market, the moment she'd lost him. Now he was found. She stood, shaky, and asked to see him. The doctor led them to a small room where Caleb sat, staring at the floor, his leather notebook clutched to his chest. Laura approached slowly, her voice trembling. "Ethan, it's true. You're my son." He looked up, his hazel eyes mirroring hers, filled with a storm of emotions, relief, confusion, fear. "I don't know what to feel," he admitted, his voice raw. Laura knelt beside him, resisting the urge to pull him into her arms. "You don't have to know yet. I'm just so glad you're here." He nodded, a tear escaping, and for the first time he didn't pull away when she touched his hand. Grace and Sophie stepped back, giving them space. Ethan flipped open his notebook, showing a sketch of a riverbank with a boy and a bear. "I kept drawing this, not knowing why," he said. Laura's heart ached. It was their river, their memories. She shared a story of taking him to the French Broad, tossing pebbles, his laughter echoing. Ethan listened, his shoulders relaxing, a faint smile breaking through. The room felt lighter, as if the truth had lifted a weight. Laura promised to be patient, to let him find his way back to her, and for now, that was enough. Nathan Cole sat in a holding cell at the Asheville Police Department, his polished facade gone. The community center event had unraveled his lies, and now he faced charges of kidnapping and child endangerment. Grace's evidence, school records, witness statements, and Nathan's sudden move in 2007 had been damning. Laura stood outside the station with Grace, watching as reporters swarmed, their cameras flashing. The story had exploded across Asheville, headlines screaming, "Local hero hides dark secret." Laura felt no triumph, only a hollow relief. Justice was coming, but it couldn't erase Ethan's lost years. Investigators uncovered Nathan's meticulous cover-up. He'd forged documents to pass Ethan as his nephew, Caleb, and moved frequently to avoid scrutiny. Neighbors in Charlotte recalled his overprotectiveness, never letting Caleb play unsupervised. The police found a locked box in Nathan's home containing Ethan's old school ID, a chilling keepsake. Nathan's confession came haltingly. He'd been obsessed with starting a new life, saw Ethan as a chance to fix his failures as a counselor. He claimed he cared for him, but the court saw it for what it was, control, not love. The community reeled. Volunteers who'd praised Nathan felt betrayed. The community center closed temporarily, its reputation tainted. Sophie, who'd worked events there, told Laura she felt guilty for not noticing Caleb's unease sooner. Laura reassured her, "You helped us find him." Grace published a front-page article detailing Ethan's story with sensitivity, urging readers to support missing persons causes. The piece went viral, sparking donations to local charities. Laura visited the station one last time, facing Nathan through a glass partition. His eyes were cold, unrepentant. "I gave him a home," he said. Laura's voice was steady. "You stole his life." She walked away, closing that chapter. Ethan, still adjusting, refused to see Nathan, focusing instead on therapy sessions Grace had arranged. Laura found solace in knowing Nathan's trial loomed, his sentence likely severe. For her and Ethan, healing was the next step, fragile but possible, as Laura and Ethan moved into a small house in North Asheville, a quiet retreat with a porch overlooking the Blue Ridge Mountains. The DNA confirmation had brought them together, but rebuilding their bond was a delicate dance. Ethan, still grappling with his identity as Caleb, often sat silently at breakfast, staring at his coffee. Laura filled the silence with small gestures. Fresh pancakes, a sketch left on his bedside table, hoping to ease him into their new life. The house, with its creaky floors and sunlit kitchen, felt like a fresh start, but Ethan's unease lingered. Mornings were the hardest. Ethan would wake from nightmares, his breath ragged, muttering about a locked door. Laura learned to sit quietly nearby, offering a glass of water or a soft word, never pushing. She enrolled him in therapy, recommended by Grace, where he met weekly with a counselor specializing in trauma. Laura, too, attended sessions, learning to navigate his silences without taking them personally. She'd catch him staring at her old photos of Ethan, him at the river, him with Max the bear, and see the conflict in his eyes, a stranger to his own past. Simple routines helped. Laura taught Ethan to cook, laughing when he burned toast, and they'd sit on the porch, sharing stories of Asheville's quirks. But tension flared when Laura called him Ethan. He'd flinch, as if the name didn't fit. "I'm trying," he'd say, his voice tight. Laura nodded, hiding her ache. She decorated his room with neutral colors, leaving space for him to make it his own. Neighbors dropped by with casseroles, and Sophie visited, bringing coffee and easy chatter. Yet Ethan's smiles were rare, his trust fragile. Laura clung to patience, knowing love needed time to grow. Ethan sat in his room, a blank canvas propped against the wall. Therapy had helped him name his feelings, anger at Nathan, confusion about his past, fear of losing himself again. He'd been Caleb for 18 years, a life built on lies, but Laura's stories of Ethan, his love for kites, his giggle at fireflies, felt like pieces of a puzzle he couldn't solve. He started painting, a habit from childhood he hadn't realized he'd kept. His first piece was a river, vibrant yet turbulent, mirroring his inner chaos. Laura hung it in the living room, her pride quiet but radiant. He joined Laura at the community art program, watching kids paint with reckless joy. Their laughter stirred memories, faint but real, tossing pebbles with Laura, chasing dragonflies. He sketched these moments, showing them to his therapist, who encouraged him to explore his dual identity. "You're both Ethan and Caleb," she said. "You don't have to choose." Ethan tested the name Ethan, saying it aloud, feeling its weight. At night, he and Laura pored over old photos, and her voice steady as she recounted their life before 2007. Each story anchored him, though he struggled with guilt for the years he'd lived as someone else. Sophie became a friend, meeting him for walks in Carrier Park. She shared her own loss, her brother's death, and her honesty helped Ethan open up. One day he painted a portrait of Laura, her eyes warm but weary, and gave it to her. "This is how I see you," he said, his voice soft. Laura's tears fell, and for the first time Ethan hugged her, a tentative step toward trust. Painting became his bridge to her, a way to reclaim his past while building a future, one careful stroke at a time. Laura and Ethan walked through Asheville's River Arts District Farmers Market, the same place where he'd vanished 18 years ago. It was a crisp spring morning in 2025, the stalls vibrant with flowers and fresh bread. Laura hesitated at first, the memories sharp, but Ethan had suggested the visit, a quiet bravery in his eyes. They wandered past vendors, Laura pointing out the honey stall Ethan once loved. He smiled, a real smile, not the guarded ones she'd grown used to. "I think I remember the taste," he said, buying a honey stick and handing her one. Their laughter mingled with the market's hum, a fragile but precious connection. They sat on a bench by the French Broad River, the water glinting under the sun. Ethan pulled out his sketchbook, showing Laura a drawing of a kite soaring above the riverbank. "I used to dream about flying one," he said, his voice soft. Laura's heart swelled. She told him about their old kite-flying days at Carrier Park, how he'd giggle when the string tugged his small hands. Ethan listened, his shoulders relaxed, the weight of his dual identity, Caleb and Ethan, easing in her presence. She didn't push, letting the moment breathe, their shared history knitting them closer. A child ran by, chasing a butterfly, and Ethan's eyes followed, a flicker of joy crossing his face. Laura touched his arm. "You're here now," she said. He nodded, his hand brushing hers, a gesture that felt like a promise. They bought peaches from a vendor, sharing bites, their laughter a quiet victory over years of loss. The market, once a place of pain, was becoming a space for healing, each step together a testament to their growing bond. Back at their North Asheville home, Ethan stood in the living room, a canvas before him. He'd been painting more, his art a bridge between his fractured past and uncertain future. He dipped his brush in gold and orange, crafting a sunrise over the Blue Ridge Mountains, its glow warm and hopeful. Laura watched from the doorway, her heart full. He turned, catching her gaze, and beckoned her over. "This is for you," he said, handing her the painting. The colors seemed to dance, a symbol of new beginnings. Laura's eyes welled up as she hugged him, his embrace tighter than before. They sat on the porch, planning a trip to the Smoky Mountains, a place Laura had promised to take him when he was 5. "We'll hike, maybe sketch the views," she said, her voice light. Ethan nodded, his sketchbook open to a new page, blank but brimming with possibility. He spoke of taking art classes, maybe working at Malaprops again, his voice steadier than it had been. Laura listened, her pride quiet but fierce, knowing his journey to reclaim himself would take time but was underway. As the sun set, casting a golden haze over Asheville, Ethan said, "I'm still figuring out who Ethan is, but I'm glad you're here." Laura smiled, her heart aching with love. "We'll figure it out together." The horizon glowed, a quiet promise of tomorrow. Their story wasn't finished, but in that moment, they had each other, and that was enough to face whatever lay ahead. We'd love your support. Please subscribe to our channel to help our team grow, share this video with friends and family, and hit the like button. Comment below to share your emotions, and let us know if you'd like a part 2.